Welcome to another LinkedIn Sites, where I get to have conversations with some pretty awesome people. And today, again, no exceptions. I got Coach Dan Gordon. So let's start from the top. So, Coach Dan, tell us who you are and what you do.
Jeffrey, first of all, thank you so much for having me on. And rather than talk about myself, I'd rather just jump in and offer some help for entrepreneurs. Can we do that instead of just me blah, blah, blah about myself?
This is your show, and you're the host.
I've already taken over. So
go for it. So tell us how you help people.
Yeah. So the thing that I talk to everybody about is selling. Because selling is key. No matter what business you're in the business of sales. You're constantly selling yourself. And if you're telling yourself, oh, I don't like sales, what you're thinking is, I don't want to be like one of those crappy salespeople. So I'm going to give you a simple piece of advice that'll completely change the nature of your sales. 4 words, right? Whenever somebody gives you pushback, they have objections, they say it's too expensive, you say these 4 words. Hey, I get it. Hey, I get it. Someone says it's too expensive. It's not like, oh, no, it's value. It's, hey, I get it. Look, when I want to buy something and I feel like I don't have the money, I feel like I can't afford it. I hate that feeling. I get it. That's a terrible feeling, right? So can we talk about what you really want, right? And then we can talk about the value, the price, and really see if we can make this fit. See, what Hey, I Get It does is it puts you on the same level playing field with the person and makes them understand that you've had that same feeling too. And we always like talking with someone who we can relate to, who knows our background, who feels like we can relate to them on an emotional level.
Yeah, and I love that because I'm a professional speaker. I'm out there as an expert, thought leader, all those things. And there was a distinction that a fellow speaker made, James Ribalata, and I always wish it was my thing, but it's his, and I give him credit. But he makes a distinction between credibility, which is us trying to figure out how, oh, yes, I've done this much and I have this award, and all these businesses trying to prove themselves, as opposed to relatability, which is what really connects you with people, which is to make them feel like they understand, that you understand where they're coming from. And I think that's exactly how, hey, I get it. As you said, it's relatable. It's making it so that you actually, and it's just showing that you care as well. Like, I think it's this, like, hey, I'm listening to you and I get what you're saying. I was just talking about
I feel your pain.
Being reactive and responding to something. So a lot of times we just react and it's like, blah, versus actually listening with the intention to hear and then reply.
Completely true. And this is, to kind of a roundabout way of answering your question. This is what I do. I love working with entrepreneurs. I love working with badass entrepreneurs who want to step into the fire of the things that they struggle with. I mean, you can see it right here. Success equals doing the stuff you don't want to do. Every success I've ever had and every success my client has ever had started with, I don't know about this.
Yeah, and I think it's that being uncomfortable with being uncomfortable, or being comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
Which is something that I think is a genuine way of being, in business, you're not really supposed to be vulnerable, or at least that's the perception. And we don't realize, like, that's actually a really incredible power to be vulnerable, because then you're being real and authentic and genuine, and everyone has, challenges. And so I think there's that alpha male kind of approach to things that just isn't as effective as just being,
it's completely outdated. Yeah.
Well, I love the, people say, are you in B2B or B2C? And I say, and it is not original in me, H to H, human to human,
nice.
Which I think is, again, a lot of what we're talking about here is, how do you take the business context and make it so that it's more on the human level? And, I'm a huge, I've fallen into the rabbit hole of AI, and that's a big question. So I consider myself an AI humanist, and really, and we're going to talk, I have a question for that later about keeping the human in the loop. But I think, again, if we were to think about our interactions in business with a more humanistic approach, that'll get, and really genuinely caring about what people say, it's going to be something that's going to not just be good, but it's going to be good for business. And that's the always thing. It's like, it's so great that you get to be authentic and genuine as a person, because then you also get to, succeed.
Right. But see, that's the fear. That's the fear a lot of people have when they go into a sales situation, when they go into a sales conversation, and it is a conversation. It's not a pitch. It's a conversation. You are relating with someone. Most people enter into that conversation in fear, right? The fear that they're not going to get what they want, right? They're not going to make the sale, right? They're not going to get the money, or the fear that they're going to be rejected, right? So you're approaching a situation in fear. That means that there's this little part of your brain called the amygdala. It's about the size of an almond. It's 40 million years old, right? This is the thing that has kept humans alive. We are a paranoid species. That paranoia is why we have survived this long. When you're merging onto the highway, the amygdala is in charge. It's getting you to check your mirrors, look around, making sure that you don't have an accident. However, it's always worried about your safety. It is the ultimate helicopter parent. So when you go into a sales situation, you have to recognize that you have alarms going off in your head that are signaling danger. And the way that you ease those alarms is to invest yourself in the needs and requirements of the person that you're talking to. Like, that's the thing. Look, I am not a natural born salesperson. I've never met one of those people. Right? I used to hyperventilate before and after sales meetings, sometimes during sales meetings. And the thing that saved me was I just stopped thinking about whether or not I was going to make the sale and just really invested in the other person, right? I'd go, back in the day before Zoom, I'd go into their company, go into their office. I'd look around the office, pick out one thing that I wanted to talk about, right? Because if they have it on the wall or on the desk, it's important to them. Same thing with Zoom. Jeffrey, I could talk to you about your beautiful family. Look at those great kids that are behind. Look at the smile that Jeffrey just had, right? Like, what I'm doing, and it still works. It still works because it's genuine. What do people love? Their children, their dog, right? Traveling. You can see it all around them. Speak within the realm of the other person's interest. And when you do that, you stop worrying about whether or not you're going to make the sale, and you build a genuine relationship.
And so my daughters are sophomores in college. My son's a sophomore in high school, and, they're thinking about their careers. And I say, it's all about relationships. It's all about building, nurturing, genuinely building up those relationships, because that's how you get ahead. And that's also a good way to enjoy life, to, stop worrying about, oh my God, is this going to happen? That going to happen? It's just a conversation. And I think that's really good. You said that, you want to work with badass entrepreneurs, and I love that. So I want you to do two things. One, I need you to define badass in that context. And two, does that mean you don't work with people you don't work in corporate or because I think it's important to kind of have a target audience, but I'm just curious, sometimes it's easy to know who you do work for versus who you don't generally work with.
Okay. Here's the thing. If you're listening, the fact that you're listening to this right now or watching this, it means that you're badass, right? It means that you're taking time out of your day to increase your effectiveness, grow your intelligence, learn more about business and your business, right? So that right there makes you badass. The thing that I can describe easier what I don't work with. I don't know. I have to think about it. Maybe later. It's not the right time. It's too expensive, right? All of these excuses about why you can't. Like I said earlier, those are always running in your mind. And if you give in to those excuses, that's the life that you're going to live. And I've seen far too many people living a life of those excuses, and they get angrier as they get older. They get more discouraged as they get older, and they create less and less as they get older, as opposed to staying in a space of constant evolution. And when you stay in a space of constant evolution, eventually, bam, you're going to hit the wall. You're going to hit that wall where you're like, oh, holy crap, I just screwed up big, or I don't know what to do next. I've been really successful at this. Why can't I be successful at that? People in transition are drawn to me like a magnet. I was just at this huge event at Cabo San Lucas, and I talked with 10 or 15 entrepreneurs, all had the same thing going on. Hey, I've been really successful at this. I'm trying to do this new thing. I don't know why I'm not successful at that. And the answer is this brand new thing that you want to do, conceptually, you can see yourself being successful at it. But because it's so outside of the realm of your experience, again, that amygdala, those warning signs are flashing. They're telling you, no, stay with this thing that you know. Do this boring thing that you've already mastered, right? But your drive is saying, I want to do this thing over here. You are engaged in an internal tug of war. On one side is the wanting for safety. On the other side is wanting for evolution. Right? I am like, and I've been called this, right? I didn't come up with this brand. I've been called this dozens of times. I say, Coach Dan, you're like a therapist for my business, right? You have moved me from one space to another. You've opened up this purview of what I didn't believe was possible. And I do that because I understand how human beings work. I used to work in the personal development sphere. Right? I spent a decade flying around the country teaching these intensive 3-day seminars. Right? So human beings are systems, and I understand how that system works. There's only 3 or 4 things that stop us, only 3 or 4 things that really hold us back. And once we deconstruct those things and we build a new structure around them, transition, the new thing becomes so easy and fun.
I think a lot of what I'm hearing too is when you're talking about badass and being open and wanting to, to me, I the term, long life learner, and I think it's important. I love having these conversations because I think you can learn from anyone. I teach at university level, and I learn from my students, and I learn from listening to podcasts and books. So let me ask you this next question, which is, can you think of a business book or a podcast that you think was worth the time to read or to listen to?
Yeah, I mean, the greatest podcast I know is called For Badass Entrepreneurs Only. The host is this really cool guy. His name is Coach Dan Gordon. Yeah, I know I'm being a bit of a jerk here. It's really something. I listen. I ingest so much information, and I don't really focus on the person. Like, one of my first heroes was Brendan Burchard. And I really like listening to him because of his approach, right? And his approach is both technical, procedural, and emotional. And if you are not bringing emotion into what you are doing, then you will ultimately fail. Like, look, I like Gary Vee. I like Gary Vee from a branding perspective. He has done an amazing job of cutting out a niche for himself and planting his flag in that niche and saying, this is who I am. What I've found is that push, drive, almost a beating yourself up until you reach success. It has a limited scope. Eventually you get tired of beating yourself up. Eventually you get tired of saying, I'm not doing enough. I have to work harder. I'm not this, I'm not that. Eventually your system resets back to love, back to a state of, I just want to feel good. Right. And what I like about Brendan and people of his ilk is that, right, that yes, For Badass Entrepreneurs Only is for badass entrepreneurs. And it is finding that joy of what you're bringing to the world and receiving that love back again. It is essential for longevity. My grandfather built a business of a meatpacking company. And I grew up with steaks the size of manhole covers. It was great, right? But I would watch him. I watched his work ethic. And I watched how he negotiated with cattle owners and farmers and all these people, and at the bottom of it was the relationship, and they always ended up with a hearty handshake and a laugh, and I would see the joy of what he brought to these people's lives, and that is endemic in every successful person, from Dr. Martin Luther King to Richard Branson. It's the joy of what you're bringing to the world that has to be foundational. And so anything that I listen to, anything that I ingest has to have that as a part of it.
Yeah. And I think, that idea of joy, it's pure. That's one of the things, talk about
Mm.
joy versus other kinds of maybe good feelings. There's a pureness to it, and it's contagious. It's, when someone has it,
Yeah.
it's hard not to want to be a part of what they're doing or what they're saying. So I agree. That's really important. Um, Let me ask you a hard question then.
Oh
So
no.
it's probably the hardest one I ask, which is, so,
Okay.
you're connected to lots of people on LinkedIn. That's kind of the part of what LinkedIn's all about. Who's a
Yeah.
LinkedIn connection that you're happy, that you feel has really, kind of been a good thing to have a connection?
Joe Ingram. Joe Ingram, Joe Ingram, Joe Ingram. Connect with Joe Ingram. This guy is the best salesperson I have ever met. He has this acerbic wit, but underneath it, and sorry to burst your bubble here, Joe, is a heart of gold. And so connect with him. He has a podcast called The War Room, and you've got to check that out. It's a lot of fun. In fact, The War Room is on at 2 p.m. today, and you can check it out on LinkedIn. The War Room with Joe Ingram, 2 p.m. Pacific time. So you can do the math. But if you're going to connect with anybody on LinkedIn, connect with Joe, check out what he's doing. Is tons of great content, and his mission in life is to be in service.
I love that.
He is.
Shout out to Joe.
He calls himself, and it's true, he is the sales genius. Check him out.
I'll use one of those. So aside from, AI, which I'm obsessed with, I'm also kind of obsessed with content, and feeding the content beast. So in terms of the content, so you've been mentioning, Joe and some other podcasts and some other personalities. What's your favorite type of content that you consume from brands or from thought leaders?
I listen to podcasts religiously. I really love Entrepreneurs on Fire. That's a great one. There's the Yes Group, I can't remember what it is, but it's these three young guys who just do all this really cool stuff. They get people to say yes to them, and they're fearless, or they're fearful, but they do it anyway, right? They really love asking people complicated, or asking for really big things. Like, they got this guy who owns a yacht to give them a free party on his yacht, right? Just by asking. So the
definitely power in asking.
Yeah, right. And so I really love podcasts because it's this little mini content that you can just tune into and learn so much. It's look, there's a lot of crappy podcasts out there, just like there's a lot of crappy everything out there.
There's a good podcast, almost anything.
Yes,
everything.
right. Yeah. But you can find it.
Yeah. And then, so you create a podcast and you create content. What do you find is kind of your biggest challenge when you're trying to create good content?
Yeah. It's getting it out there consistently. I have no problem actually creating the content. When I go and just take a walk, I'll grab my phone and just talk into it, right? And then I run that through a platform called Opus Clips. And Opus Clips it's a great AI thing. I'm sure that, right? Yeah. It does this great job of like editing it down and, taking this 5-minute video, making a 1-minute version of it. Right. So,
some Opus Clips from this, so don't worry.
Yes. Okay. Fantastic. Right. But that's the challenge, is to be consistent. Yeah. I have a team, but I'm really particular about what goes out there. So it is, putting good content out there, being consistent about it, and making it look good, right? Because if your brand looks like crap, then people think your message is crap.
100%. I'm a brand guy, so your branding has to be, top notch and buttoned up. But consistency is something that lots and lots of people struggle with. It's one of those things, because you have to make it a habit. You have to have a system. You have to have all those things in place. And, we're busy doing other things. It's not always the first thing on our list. We're trying to serve our clients, not create content. And sometimes You have to, pick your battles.
And I love what you said there, Jeffrey, about process. Like, I mean, I'm a systems guy, and so anything that I create, there's a system behind it. Because look, a lot of people say, if you want something done right, you got to do it yourself. Not true. What you have to do is create a system that anybody can follow, right? You have to know how to do it first. So when I edit something, I document my entire editing process. I make a Loom video of it. I take the audio, I run it through ChatGPT, and I say, make a list of instructions from this transcript. Boom, it does it. Right? Like, whoa, it's amazing, right? It just take me hours to make that list, right? To make those instructions.
So that goes to my next question about AI.
Go for it.
I'm become fairly obsessed with it. Obviously you're using it, so you're talking, is it saving you time? What do you find the most valuable from it? What do you find the most frustrating from it? Are you worried about it?
I'm not worried at all. People keep saying, "Oh, AI is going to take my job. AI is going to take my job." No. You're going to give your job away to AI. If you are not evolving what you're doing, you get lost. Think about it this way: when somebody was working on the little Morse code, that machine, and they saw them putting up the telephone wires, they had a choice. Right? They could say, no one's going to use that stupid telephone. Or they could go, well, I better learn how to use the phone. Or I better learn how to sell telephone equipment because that's where things are going. Right? You have to evolve. A friend of mine, somebody who is in a business group I was in, she's a graphic designer. And this is a couple of years ago. And I said, look, this is what you got to do. You got to become an expert at prompt writing because your job is going away. So you got to become an expert at prompt writing. And then you can say to your clients, I can design anything from any style in any way. Right. So I am every designer out there. And she was like, nah, this AI thing's a fad. I'm like, bye. I'll tell you
whether you like it or not. So the question is,
yes,
are you going to use it to your advantage or are you going to fall behind?
Invest yourself. Right. Invest yourself in AI. As a coach, I am building a Coach Dan Gordon AI bot, right? So you can get the experience of me 24/7, right? Just by typing in. And what I'm working on.
People, sorry.
I'll tell you the coolest thing I did with AI, and I just did it last night. Nearly 100 years ago, my great grandfather wrote a story of his life, and I took that story that he typed out, transcribed, OCR'd it, put it in, transcribed, made a Google Doc. Last night, I put it into ChatGPT and I said, I want you to use this book. And I want you to assume the personality of the writer of this book. The guy's name was Harry Sokolic. And I said, I want to be able to talk with my great grandfather. And so it did that. And for an hour, I was having a talk with my great grandfather, long dead, about, he was a great businessman, about business, about his fears, about the things that he struggled with. And yeah, I mean, it's an extrapolation. It's kind of like on Star Trek, the holodeck, right? When they say, make this person. But it was really cool because it was kind of talking like him. And it was giving me examples from his life that were in the book and making these connections in the book that I hadn't even thought about. And like, wow, AI is limited by your imagination. So you better grow your imagination.
I love that. That's fantastic. All right. Thinking of your imagination. So I'm a fan. Obviously, I produce animation and I'm kind of in that world. So last question is, can you think of the pantheon of animated characters? Can you name a favorite one?
Bugs Bunny. And I'll tell you why I love Bugs Bunny. Bugs never caused any problems, right? Bugs was always, when the cartoon started, Bugs was always, he was playing the banjo, he was chatting, he was singing, and he was taking a shower. Somebody always screwed with Bugs. And Bugs Bunny's attitude was, you started it, I'm going to finish it. And he always won. And he always won in joy. Like it was never like revenge, but it was like, I'm going to return to my joy and get this person out of my life. And it's
And I think he
really
did it with a
interesting.
lot of humor. That was why
Yes.
we enjoyed it so much, is because he's having a laugh while he's doing this. It's so ridiculous to start with that it's like, well, hey, let's have some fun with this.
Yes,
Um,
right. And he just, right. That's a perfect word for it, Jeffrey. It was ridiculous. And he increased the ridiculousness to the point where it was so absurd. And that's the humor that came out of the cartoon. But the personality they did, especially in the early days of the Warner Brothers cartoons, they did such a good job of maintaining that personality that you really felt like, and if you watch these things consistently, as I did, you really felt like, wow, this is like a real person.
mm, yeah, I agree with you. When those the thing that I like about animated movies and TV shows sometimes is when you watch them consistently, like a beloved TV show, you feel like you know these people. And with animation, sometimes if you forget it's animated, that's when it's like, I think a lot of the Pixar movies are successful because
Yeah.
they operate on that emotional human level, and it doesn't matter whether it's animated or real. It's like you get sucked into the story, and that's, I think, you get sucked into the characters,
Hmm.
and that's the benefit of a really powerful character in the story.
Yeah. The other, just as you're talking about Pixar, the other thing that comes to mind is the relationship between Woody and Buzz in the original Toy Story. And it's such a great relationship because it's like an entrepreneurial the relationship. Woody is the intellect, Buzz is the emotion. Buzz is just, he is all out there and he's so serious and Woody keeps trying to explain things to him. You are a toy. And Buzz is like, boy, you have one big problem, buddy. And I love that relationship because those two guys, when they came together at the end of the movie, how well they worked together, right? They were two interlocking puzzle pieces. And in entrepreneurialism, you can't do it on your own. You need help, you need partnership, and you got to find a partner who is not like you, right? Who is somebody who is that interlocking puzzle piece, right? Who brings the other side of your mania.
I love that. So if you have mania, which we all have, go and find someone who can help you. Maybe Coach Dan will be that person. Dan, thank you so much. This has been awesome, as I knew it would be. Really enjoyed this conversation. And thank you so much for being a guest here. I appreciate it.
And please reach out. Coach Dan Gordon on LinkedIn, Coach Dan Gordon anywhere. If you just do a Google search for Coach Dan Gordon, you will find me. You can go to dangordonenterprise.com. Listen to me on For Badass Entrepreneurs Only. I'd love to connect with you. And if you message me, I have a challenge for you called the Free Dessert Challenge. This is a challenge that will help you in your entrepreneurship, in your leadership, and in your sales ability. Hit me up for the Free Dessert Challenge. You will love it.
That sounds really tasty. I'm sure everyone will be. Who doesn't love a free dessert? Thanks so much, Dan. Have a good one, and happy connecting.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Bye-bye.